What if I told you there's a way to see right through anyone, to figure out their true character and hidden motives, using just a couple of simple observations? No mind games or wild guesses are needed here, just pure, straightforward psychological truth. Most folks wear masks, only letting us see what they want us to notice, but beneath every smile, handshake, or kind word, there are subtle hints waiting to be spotted. Studies in social psychology back this up, showing how people can unintentionally reveal their real intentions through tiny facial expressions or behaviors they can't quite control. The first thing worth paying attention to is how someone treats people who can't offer them anything in return. If you're curious about what someone's really like, take a peek at how they act toward those who don't hold any obvious value for them. Think waiters, janitors, cashiers, or even random strangers on the street. A person who's only nice to those they need something from isn't truly kind, they're just playing a clever game. History gives us a neat example. Winston Churchill was famous for treating everyone with the same respect, whether he was chatting with royalty or the gardeners at his estate. When someone asked him about it, he said he judged people by how they handled those who couldn't do anything for them. Princess Diana showed this same vibe. She'd often talk to the palace staff like they were equals and even stood up for them with the royal family. Psychologists call this the waiter rule, a concept built on the idea that a person's real self shines through when they're dealing with folks they don't feel the need to impress. Research backs this up, too. People with strong moral character and emotional smarts tend to treat everyone with respect, no matter their status. There are a few clear signs to watch for if you're trying to spot someone's true nature. Look out for things like not thanking service workers, acting differently depending on who's watching, overreacting to little slip-ups by others, or taking advantage of people who can't push back. Studies from Stanford University have found that folks who show respect to service staff usually score higher in empathy and emotional intelligence overall. On the flip side, take a guy like Steve Jobs. Brilliant as he was, he had a reputation for being harsh with lower-level employees, which paints a different picture of his character. This trait is often seen as one of Steve Jobs' biggest personal flaws, revealing that even the most accomplished people can carry some less-than-stellar qualities. On the flip side, take Mark Zuckerberg in the early days of Facebook. He made a point to learn the names of every janitor in the office and greeted each one personally. There's also a well-known tale about young Bill Gates, who'd take potential business partners out to restaurants just to watch how they treated the staff. Then there's Richard Branson, the Virgin Group founder, who's famous for always carrying a notebook to jot down ideas and feedback from any employee, no matter their role. Carl Jung, the psychologist, tied this kind of behavior to deep-seated insecurities or a need to feel superior. His work suggests that folks who only respect people they fear or admire are often hiding a shadier side of themselves. The Dalai Lama puts it another way, saying real kindness shows up in how you treat total strangers. Modern brain science backs Jung's ideas, too. Studies in neuropsychology show that dismissing people seen as beneath you can be linked to issues in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles empathy and social skills. The second big clue to someone's true self comes from how they act once they've got some power. Character doesn't get tested when life's a breeze, it's when someone gains control that you see who they really are. History's full of examples. Nelson Mandela, after 27 years in prison, took power and used it to heal and unite a nation, not to settle scores. But flip through the history books, and you'll find plenty of cases where power brought out the worst in people. Here's the thing to remember, power doesn't change who you are, it just peels back the layers to show what's already there. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo proved this in his famous Stanford prison experiment, showing how quickly power can uncover hidden parts of a person's nature. Contrast that with Mahatma Gandhi, who had massive influence but kept living simply and helping others, proving that true greatness lies in using power to lift people up. If you really want to get a read on someone, check out what they do when they're in charge, whether it's control over money, sway over others, or just calling the shots in a small situation. Power strips away the need to fake it. When someone's in charge, they don't have to impress anyone, beg for approval, or play the part of the nice guy anymore. it's like a mask slipping off, revealing what's underneath. When people gain power, they end up revealing who they truly are deep down. A classic case is Robert Mugabe. He started out as a freedom fighter for Zimbabwe but wound up as one of Africa's harshest dictators. Research by a psychologist at UC Berkeley, Dr. Keltner, uncovered something pretty jaw-dropping. When folks get a taste of power, they often start caring less about others. He dubbed this the power paradox, the notion that people might rise to the top thanks to traits like kindness or understanding, but once they're in charge, those very qualities can slip away. Take Mark Zuckerberg as an example. He kicked things off as an idealistic college kid building a social network for students, but over time, he morphed into a leader making questionable calls about user privacy. Why does this happen? Well, when someone feels powerful, their brain chemistry literally shifts. Brain scans show a dip in activity in the mirror neurons, those little parts of the mind tied to empathy. In plain terms, they start caring less about others, seeing people more as tools to get stuff done rather than equals worth respecting. Modern neuroscientists, including those at Stanford University, back this up with studies showing noticeable changes in the frontal cortex, the empathy hub, among folks who've held leadership roles for over 5 years. Let's break it down with some real-world examples of how power unmasks character. Picture a coworker who's all smiles and support when you're on the same level. But the second they get promoted, things flip. They breeze past you in the hallway, start nitpicking your work, or shoot down your ideas in meetings. That's not just random, it's power shifting the dynamic, peeling back the curtain on who they've been all along. The promotion didn't turn them into someone new, it just let their real self step into the spotlight. Take a well-known story from Google, for instance. One manager there used to be a total team player, always encouraging everyone. But after climbing the ladder, they switched gears, turning into a tough, no-nonsense boss who left that supportive vibe behind. Power gave them a fresh sense of control, and they chose to wield it in a way that wasn't exactly fair. It's like the mask they'd been wearing slipped off the moment they got some authority. On the flip side, someone with genuine character will treat the people working under them with the same respect they always have. Instead of hovering over every detail, they'll lift up their team and help them grow. Rather than clinging to control, they'll hand off responsibilities with trust. A shining example of this is Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, who's known for sticking to his humble, employee-focused leadership style even after landing the top job. Power doesn't just show up in boardrooms or big titles, though, it's woven into personal relationships, too. Think about the connections in your life, whether they're romantic, family ties, or friendships. A solid person, even when they gain an edge, maybe emotional, financial, or social, will still treat you fairly and with kindness. Take Warren Buffett, for instance. Despite becoming one of the world's richest people, he still lives in the same house and keeps the same friends he's had for decades. But someone with shaky morals? They'll zero in on your weak spots and use them to their advantage. Have you ever noticed how some folks flip their attitude when they realize you need them? A friend who used to be all warmth might start putting you down once they sense they've got the upper hand. Or a romantic partner who once cherished you turns controlling the moment they know you're hooked. That shift happens because uneven power changes how people act. If someone's only nice when they're the one leaning on you, that's a red flag waving high. Picture a person who was once down to earth and approachable, then fame, cash, or recognition rolls in, and suddenly they're looking down on everyone else. Carl Jung had a take on this: power rips off the persona, that polished mask we wear to fit in. When we don't need approval anymore, the real self steps out, and if that self is harsh, manipulative, or self-centered, there's no filter left to hide it. History's packed with examples of power leading to corruption. So many figures start out as heroes only to end up as tyrants. Tons of dictators kicked off as revolutionaries, rallying against unfairness and inequality, but they turned into something uglier than the systems they toppled. It shows their hunger for power was never about helping others, it was about calling the shots. Kings and leaders who once promised freedom often morphed into the very oppressors they fought against. Napoleon Bonaparte's a prime case. He began as a champion of revolutionary ideals but crowned himself emperor, proving how power can twist even the best intentions into something unrecognizable. Abraham Lincoln once said that nearly anyone can handle tough times, but if you really want to test someone's character, hand them some power. That's why Carl Jung stressed the importance of understanding the shadow, that hidden side of ourselves we don't always show. Power lets a person do whatever they want, and that's when their true self steps into the light. Modern psychologists, like Philip Zimbardo with his famous Stanford prison experiment, back this up. Jung believed people don't really change, these traits were always there, tucked away. Power just takes away the need to keep them under wraps. So, what keeps power from twisting someone? First, it's self-awareness. Folks who know their own flaws are less likely to let them take over. Jung called this exploring your shadow. Someone who's done that inner work can resist power's temptations. Nelson Mandela's a perfect example. Even after decades in prison and stepping into leadership, he held on to his compassionate values. Second, it's about having strong principles. When someone's guided by kindness, integrity, and a solid moral compass, they're more likely to stay grounded. Third, the most dangerous people in power are the ones no one can challenge. Without pushback, there's nothing to keep them in check. What does your own power say about you? It's easy to point fingers at others, but the trickier question is this: how do you act when you've got the upper hand? Do you treat people differently depending on what they can do for you? Are you kind only when it pays off? Those choices reveal who you really are. If you're already dealing with someone toxic, step 1 is facing the facts. Stop making excuses for them. From there, here's how to protect yourself. Start by building emotional distance. If cutting ties completely isn't an option, dial back how much you let them in. Share less, especially about your struggles or weak spots. They might use that against you later. Psychologists say keeping that emotional space is key to staying mentally healthy around draining people. Next, size up someone's character before you trust them. Watch how they treat others when they think no one's paying attention. It's a sneak peek at their real self. Then, set clear boundaries. Toxic types will test your limits, nudging you with guilt or manipulation to get their way. Don't budge. If they cross a line, reinforce it. Studies show people with firm boundaries are less likely to get steamrolled. For example, if they toss out a rude comment, try saying, "I don't join in on conversations that put me down." If they lean on guilt, respond with, "I get that you're upset, but my choice stands." Another tip: don't waste energy trying to fix them. Plenty of people spend years hoping someone will turn around, but here's the hard truth: if they wanted to change, they'd have done it by now. Instead of waiting for them to shape up, pour your time into folks who already treat you well. Also, keep control over your own life. Toxic people love making you reliant on them. Stay independent emotionally, financially, and mentally. Build a support network outside their reach. If it's a boss or a family member, start figuring out ways to shrink their influence over your decisions. Research highlights that financial freedom and a wide social circle are huge in breaking free from toxic ties. Next, watch how they handle conflict. When things don't go their way, do they lash out, play the guilt card, or point fingers? That's a big tell. Finally, trust the signs, not the excuses. Jung said we often ignore the truth because it's uncomfortable, but the longer we dodge it, the deeper they sink their hooks. If they act smug, put others down, or get cocky after gaining an edge, see it as a warning flare. So, what'll you do with all this? Will you start noticing how people treat those who can't offer them anything? Will you clock their behavior when they've got power? Once you spot these patterns, they're impossible to unsee. That awareness gives you a serious edge. It shields you from being fooled, helps you build stronger connections, and lets you surround yourself with people who've got real integrity. But it also puts you on the spot. If you're going to size up others' character, you've got to be ready to look at your own. How do you treat people below you? What do you do when you're the one in charge? Real growth kicks off with self-reflection. So ask yourself, if someone judged you through this same lens, what would they see?